For the past few weeks, most XRP holders have been watching the same thing: the price. Every small dip creates fear, every small bounce creates hope, and every headline seems to convince people that nothing is actually happening. But what if that's exactly why so many investors are missing the bigger picture? Because while social media is arguing about daily price candles, something has quietly started to change beneath the surface. It isn't a single announcement. It isn't one viral tweet. It's a shift that is happening across multiple pieces of the market at the same time, and history has shown that these kinds of changes often become obvious only after prices have already moved. Right now, fear is dominating the conversation. Stock markets have become increasingly volatile. Technology shares have pulled back. Geopolitical tensions continue making headlines, and uncertainty has returned to the financial markets. Normally, that kind of environment scares investors away from risk. But experienced investors know that periods of uncertainty are also when capital quietly begins looking for the next opportunity. That's why today's XRP story isn't really about today's price. It's about what's changing around the market. One of the biggest mistakes retail investors make is believing that markets move only after everyone sees the news. In reality, major shifts usually begin long before the average investor notices them. Institutions don't wait for social media confirmation. They prepare while everyone else is distracted. And that's exactly why today's discussion matters. Over the last several days, we've seen growing concerns about global markets, questions surrounding regulation, and continued discussions about where capital could flow once uncertainty begins to settle. None of these events, by themselves, guarantee that XRP will suddenly explode higher, but together, they create a very different picture than the one most people are focusing on. Instead of asking, why isn't XRP moving today, a better question might be, what is the market preparing for next? Because money doesn't disappear, it rotates. Throughout history, we've watched investors move from one sector to another. Sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's commodities, sometimes it's precious metals. And when one narrative starts losing momentum, investors begin searching for the next one before everyone else catches on. That doesn't mean XRP is guaranteed to be the next destination. But ignoring the possibility without looking at the evidence could be just as risky as blindly believing every bullish prediction online. And that's where I think almost everybody is looking in the wrong direction. The biggest development isn't a price chart. It isn't a rumor. And it isn't another influencer predicting impossible price targets. It's a combination of market conditions that could slowly begin changing how investors think about digital assets over the coming weeks. So what exactly is the signal that almost everyone is missing? It's not hidden inside an XRP chart. It's happening across the broader financial markets. When investors begin losing confidence in one narrative, they don't simply pull their money out and leave it sitting in cash forever. Eventually, that capital starts searching for the next opportunity with stronger long-term potential. Over the past year, we've watched investors chase one trend after another. First, it was artificial intelligence. Then it was chip manufacturers. Before that, it was commodities and precious metals. Every cycle creates winners, but every cycle also reaches a point where expectations become so high that even good news is no longer enough to keep prices climbing. That's when attention begins to shift. We're starting to see more conversations about regulation, tokenization, blockchain infrastructure, and real-world utility instead of purely speculative hype. While headlines still focus on daily market volatility, the digital asset industry continues moving forward behind the scenes. Ripple is one example of that larger trend. Whether people agree with Ripple's strategy or not, the company has continued expanding its enterprise focus. Instead of relying on social media excitement, cross-border payments, institutional partnerships, and blockchain infrastructure remain at the center of its long-term vision. Those developments rarely create overnight price explosions, but they help build the foundation that larger financial players typically look for. Another factor many investors overlook is regulation. A lot of attention has been placed on the Clarity Act and other U.S. regulatory discussions. Some investors are worried about delays, while others expect quick progress. The reality is that legislation often takes longer than markets hope. But delayed legislation doesn't automatically stop blockchain adoption. Companies continue building, institutions continue researching the space, and infrastructure continues evolving even while policymakers debate the details. That's an important distinction. Many retail investors assume nothing is happening because they don't see immediate price action. Institutions often think differently. They spend months, or even years, preparing before capital is deployed at scale. By the time the average investor realizes a trend has changed, much of the early positioning may already be complete. This doesn't mean XRP is guaranteed to outperform every other digital asset. No one can honestly promise that. but ignoring the gradual shift toward utility-focused blockchain projects simply because the chart hasn't exploded yet could be a costly mistake. Markets usually reward patience before they reward excitement. And that's why focusing only on today's candle might cause investors to miss what the next few months could actually bring. Because the biggest opportunities often don't announce themselves with fireworks. They develop quietly while most people are still looking somewhere else. At the end of the day, the biggest question isn't whether XRP goes up tomorrow or next week. The real question is whether the reasons you invested in XRP have actually changed. If your entire investment strategy depends on daily price swings, every red candle will feel like bad news. But if you're looking at the bigger picture, regulatory progress, institutional interest, blockchain adoption, and Ripple's continued focus on real-world utility, then today's price may only be one small piece of a much larger story. The truth is, no one can guarantee where XRP will be a month from now. Anyone claiming they knows the exact price is simply making a prediction. But what we can do is watch the signals the market is giving us, separate emotion from facts, and make decisions based on evidence instead of hype. Sometimes the most important changes happen quietly, long before the majority of investors notice them, and if that turns out to be what's happening today, then patience could become one of the most valuable assets an XRP holder has. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think something has quietly changed for XRP, or do you believe the market is still waiting for a bigger catalyst? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want original XRP analysis focused on facts instead of hype, make sure to subscribe to OG John XRP Insights, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next video.